大家好，我是 IC，
我是 KT，
你现在收听的是 ICKT
矽谷为什么？Hello， 大家好，我是 KT，
大家好，我是 IC，
欢迎收听矽谷为什么。
那今天我们非常荣幸能够邀请到那我在 Berkeley SkyDeck 担任 advisor 的这个期间呢，对我非常照顾，也非常帮助我很多的这个 general manager 叫 Sibyl。那 Sibyl Chen 是目前 Berkeley SkyDeck 的加速器的总经理，同时他自己也是一名那个天使投资人。那在加入 SkyDeck 之前，他曾经担任过新创公司 Matterport 的伙伴开发跟行销总监的位置，也曾经创办过社群电商平台 Taiwanese 的营运长。那创业之前，他有8年以上的媒体跟影视经验呢。他曾经参加过很多跨国电影像是《白银帝国》的制作。那他同时在2012年出版过一本书叫 Our Treasury, The Shaping of First Generation Taiwanese Americans， 等于在叙述一个这个跨国的这个家族的故事，那成为一个台裔美国人他的背景。那他出生于科罗拉多，并在 UC Berkeley 和牛津大学拥有政治学和经济学的学位，也取得 Johns Hopkins 的国际关系硕士。我们今天非常荣幸可以邀请到 Sibyl。Hi Sibyl。
Hi， 大家好，我是陈世普 ，also known as Sibyl in English。
Yeah， 那 Sibyl 是我很要好的朋友，在这个 Berkeley SkyDeck， 那我看到他非常用心的在经营这样一个创业者的社群，同时他也带领了一群蛮厉害的专业经理人，在投资还有在协助创业者。那而且 SkyDeck 已经是一个很大的 family， 有很多的 advisor、mentors， 他们有非常多的事情要处理、要连接。那更巧的是，他也是我们另外一集来宾这个 Brian 的姐姐 ，right? So you literally be my friend, but also introduce so many good friends for me. So we're so honored to have you today.
Thank you, 谢谢。
Yeah. So let me start the interviews as a Taiwanese American who grew up in the United States. What kind of impressions and connections do you have with Taiwan? Yeah, I learned that your hometown is in Kaohsiung. Your grandpa and the father were both entrepreneurs. Is that right?
That's right. So yeah, basically all of 我家人都是还住台湾，大部分都是住高雄。and 不好意思，因为我的中文不是讲得很流利，我会用英文来解释一下。So yeah, every summer I would go back to Taiwan growing up and spend lots of time in Kaohsiung with all my aunts, uncles, and cousins. So of course my impressions of Taiwan are extremely favorable because I spent so much time there. So, even though I was born in the US, I definitely feel a very deep cultural affinity with my cousins and, the people of Taiwan. So, I just when I think back to my summers in Taiwan, they're all very fond memories of listening to, Taiwanese music and, eating Taiwan 小吃, going to Taiwan 夜市.
That's the most favorite one.
Yeah, 喝珍珠奶茶. So of course, all of those are deeply embedded memories for me. And in fact, my maternal and paternal grandparents live in downtown Kaohsiung, less than 2 minutes walk across from each other's home. So it was easy for me to basically traverse both family homes and spend a lot of time with both families. And then, as you mentioned, my on my paternal grandfather's side, there were my dad had 4 brothers. So, of course, as a family of 5 sons, everyone was in business, including my grandfather. So between my grandfather and the 5 sons, they were deep into all sorts of business, really kind of a wide range, ranging from kind of diesel gas refinery to farming, tile manufacturing, cement company, real estate development.
What a diversity.
Yeah, really just all over the map. But it was definitely, extremely, I guess, it was, kind of the reason I ultimately fell into business, just because everyone in my dad's side of the family was involved in some type of business. So family dinner conversations always were around, what was happening with business.
But you grew up in Colorado, not in a family business in the first, maybe in your childhood or best to your you're living here. So Yeah, what kind of the difference between when you grew up here and your father come back to Taiwan and in charge of some business of your family?
Yeah, so originally my dad came to the US for graduate school and studied geophysics, but then, of course, immediately was kind of enticed to stay and kind of sow his roots in the US.
Yeah.
He was working on his PhD at the Colorado School of Mines, which brought him to Colorado. And
it's a good place.
yeah, he decided that he wanted to try his own hand at business. So his first business was actually an import-export company of office supplies and office equipment from China.
Oh, cool.
In Taiwan. And so he did that for a bunch of years. And that was always in Colorado. And ultimately, after 20 plus years, he did decide to move back to Taiwan. Actually, my parents moved back to Kaohsiung in the late 90s or early 2000s. So, yeah. And then he ended up working and launching a tile factory. And then also ultimately worked at a bus company, 客运公司, so in Kaohsiung. So
wow.
So you grew up in Colorado, and you also had a very academic background from the very famous university, and specialized in politics and the economy and the international relations. Wow, it's so different because, so it seems like you should take a political or diplomatic route. Why did you start your career in the film and the media industry?
Yeah, this is a interesting question to navigate. Actually, I've always been extremely interested in politics, and I think growing up in the U.S., actually, my parents were very interested in what was happening in Taiwan. And so that absolutely informed my decision to kind of go to pursue a degree in international relations. I've always been interested in, kind of what might happen to Taiwan. And I think, it goes without saying that the U.S. in many ways as a state actor, has some influence over the future of Taiwan. So I think I was very interested in ultimately going, potentially joining the State Department. Without going into too much detail, I'll say when I finished grad school, the president of the U.S. at the time, I didn't agree with his politics. So I couldn't really see myself joining the diplomatic corps of the U.S. And so I decided, hey, what else would I really enjoy in my early 20s. And so that's when I made a U-turn and came back to California, and I went to Los Angeles and started my career in film. And people always ask me, but why? What's the, overlap between, media and politics? And I just have to say, I always kind of am attracted to kind of, working on things that have, impact on society. So politics, it's very much about the impact of policies on a large population of people, and then of course media. In film, you can really move people and provoke serious thought about what's happening in the world and in life through a different form. So to me, both of them were incredibly interesting, and I landed on the doorsteps of Hollywood right after graduate school, much to my parents' dismay. Just paid for graduate school. Why do you want to go to Hollywood? And I said, don't worry.
At least you experienced the whole, the golden year, right?
Yeah, I did. I
journey.
At least when I first got to Hollywood, things were still, it was kind of before the economic downturn of 2009. And so things were still happening, and there was a lot of movies.
Before the smartphone came and the Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. There was still, the distribution of movies was still fairly robust.
Yeah.
I ended up in LA, and of course, for the next couple of years, worked at the two largest talent agencies, which are William Morris and CAA. And, that ended up being a great adventure and journey for me. I met so many of the people I really admired growing up, both filmmakers, producers, writers, and it was kind of a dream come true. I really got to help, I worked for the film finance group at CAA. So that department was very focused on brokering financing for movies as well as distribution. And it's ultimately how I met my business partner, because I ultimately ended up leaving CAA and helping run a movie production company, which was originally called Crystal Clear, but then we rebranded to Crystal Entertainment.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
I learned that you're co-producing the movie 白银帝国, right?
Yeah. So that's actually through my time at CAA. That's how I met the director Yao Suhua. So basically, Yao was the director of 白银帝国, and we met, and I helped broker the distribution for the film at the time, and then also ended up becoming her business partner. So the film 白银帝国 was already in the can, and actually was already completed and had just come out of Shanghai International Film Festival by the time we met. So for me, Christine and I were focused more on looking at films for investment, and also we launched a video game division, and started producing video games, which was totally an unexpected but really fun turn for us to try our hand at something that we didn't really understand and know, but then soon kind of really got into the video game world. So
yeah, it's kind of, you see, you established so many achievements in your media and the film industry, but so why you leave the media industry and founded it? It's an idea through you and your friend, or what kind of opportunity that you found? So that's the biggest lesson learned after you run the business and starting the process after years.
Yeah. So, by the time that I was working with Christine, I was living in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And of course, living in San Francisco, you're always surrounded by entrepreneurs, right? Everyone's working at a different startup.
Ah, yes.
And I met Ben Appenzeller, who became my co-founder, and he wanted to kind of run his startup idea by me, and we started talking. And ultimately, the idea was basically this. It was very simple and straightforward. It was to launch a two-sided marketplace to better support artisanal gourmet food makers, small food makers from around the country, and help them, basically really scale, right? Because it's so hard if you're a mom and pop, maker, to kind of find your best customers nationally and then scale your business beyond the local farmers market. So at first I thought it was a cool idea, but then the timing was, I went to France for a couple of weeks of vacation to kind of learn French. And when I was in rural France, I was in this little town, Sancerre, and there were all these little cute, adorable mom and pop stores selling artisanal gourmet food products that they were really struggling to kind of keep their doors open. And, of course, there was in France, they have Jalefu. So basically, this Carrefour was putting these mom and pop shops out of business. And I thought, how do these charming little French villages, how do they survive in this global economy? This is not a problem that's unique just to rural parts of France. This is a problem that is pervasive around the world. So I started thinking about what kind of technologies could actually help these makers scale and actually survive in this next generation of the digital world. And so when I came back from France, I actually said to Ben, I love this idea, and I would actually love to be your co-founder. So from there, we started what ultimately became a 2-year journey in trying to build a two-sided marketplace. And ultimately, we were able to get over 120 vendors to sign on and sell their products, but we were never able to achieve the scale that we wanted, because it is really hard to launch and run a food tech company in Silicon Valley. I think that the kind of ROI that VCs typically want to see, you don't traditionally see that in food tech. So we weren't able to scale it and ultimately had to wind down. But it was one of the best learning experiences I had in my career, just cutting my teeth, becoming a startup founder, and learning all the different facets of what it means to be a founder.
So after founded it, and what's the stage, what's the company, and then when you joined Matterport, so it's another stop, right?
Yeah.
And then so what kinds of the inspiration did you take on those projects?
Yeah. So right after Found Eats, I was trying to figure out what's next. And at the time, one of my friends said, oh, there's this hot company called Matterport. They're just Series B, 80 people. You might want to check it out. They're actually looking to hire someone to help build out their media entertainment division. Mm-hmm. So an introduction was made, and I met Matt Bell, who was the chief strategy officer at the time. He was the original CEO of Matterport as well. And it was funny because he was looking to hire someone who had a background as a startup founder, someone who was, had a lot of initiative and could just like figure things out and run with it. So it was a great time to be joining Matterport. Matterport last year just IPO'd and went public. It's, for those that don't know, it's a 3D camera company. So if you're on the internet now and you see kind of a virtual tour of a space, a 3D tour of a house or building or venue, more often than not, it's created with a Matterport camera. So at the time that I joined, there were a couple things that I started working on. One was helping broker the partnerships with, kind of major movie studios and news publishers, but also working on Matterport's first VR app. And so, curating all the content that went into their first app kind of fell in my lap, and it was a lot of fun. It's really cool to kind of visit so many places in 3D and virtual reality. And that creative kind of curation fell to me, and it was, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, those were the things the projects that I worked on while I was at Matterport. So it was a good use of, I would say, my entertainment and media background.
Yeah.
So, having just come off of producing video games with Christina at Crystal Entertainment, just kind of working on Matterport's first VR app was really fun.
So what kind of the major customer right now that the company have? And I still connection with the Matterport?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you even just go to their website and see they have their hands all in so many different industries, notwithstanding real estate, construction,
and like AR, VR, or XR, there will be a huge, or even into the Web3 industry.
Yeah. So almost a lot of major companies have used their product at this point. Even when I left, I think their customer base was well in the, well over, 10, 20,000. So I can't really, it's a couple of years. So I'm sure, they've had a lot of big companies work and leverage their technology.
Yeah, so now it comes to the year of 2018, which you became an angel investor. Is this the first time you started doing angel investment, or what kind of investment you did in 2018?
Yeah. So, kind of similar to what I was saying about, when you land in San Francisco Bay Area, it seems inevitable that you would cross paths and interact with so many different entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But then in that same vein, it's almost impossible to eventually start angel investing because you're, constantly surrounded by entrepreneurs and people who are doing really interesting, innovative stuff and building interesting tech that are constantly pitching for funding. So the way that I came into angel investing was someone that I met through Matterport was starting his own angel syndicate. So for those that don't know, angel syndicates are just like a great way to kind of roll up a lot of active angel investors and then basically surface, interesting deal flow. So most syndicates will have some sort of investment thesis. And in this case, the person that approached me was just starting out his syndicate. So, and the first deal that he surfaced to my attention was really interesting. It was a company called VoiceFlow. So that was my very first angel investment. And subsequently, I've joined other syndicates, but one in particular, Hyphen Capital, run by Dave Liu, has also a lot of really interesting startups that that he kind of curates and surfaces to angel investors' attention. So I've subsequently also invested in companies like Offsite and Poised. And of course, I have to be an angel investor in my own brother's company, Room. So that those are I've just only done 4 investments over the past few years, but look forward to, being even more active over time.
Yeah， 在我们继续聊到他在参加 SkyDeck 之前，我小结一下我们刚才聊到的这个 Sibyl 早年的这个在媒体的工作，还有在创业，他参加过几个新创公司。那Syndicate 我跟大家解释一下，就是我们在前面聊过这个Angel Investment 天使投资的时候提过的其中一种投资的模式，就是参与一个投资的联合投资的形态。那通常会有个发起人，然后来有的是透过网络平台，有的是直接在朋友之间去寻找一个共同投资的模式，这种叫 syndication 或者 syndicate group. So we'll have the other part about SkyDeck.
Yeah, happy to tell you about SkyDeck.
Yeah, so from being an advisor of the SkyDeck to becoming the general manager, and how did SkyDeck change back then? Yeah, so when did you join the SkyDeck? Is that after 2018?
Yep. So at the time, when I left Matterport, I really wanted to be intentional and move into VC. And I was trying to figure out a way to do that. So I was going on multiple kind of informational coffee chats. And one of my friends who is an alumni of Johns Hopkins said, "Oh, you should really meet Chan Tang, who's the founding partner of SkyDeck's fund." So he made an intro, and part of the reason was my friend Leo said, what you really care about is helping founders, then there's no better place to do that than an accelerator. So when I met Chan, he invited me to join as an advisor. And that was at the October of 2018. I joined as an advisor. I was having so much fun working with startup founders, just helping them navigate the various challenges of running a company that, a month or two later, Chan and Caroline, the executive director of SkyDeck, said, "Do you think you would be interested in joining our staff full time?" And by then it was a no-brainer. I was spending a lot of time with founders, really enjoying kind of helping them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, basically at the start of 2019, I joined, and the team was super small then. So the SkyDeck has seen a lot of changes. So, again, it was founded in 2012. And when I joined, it was the start of 2019. But, since a lot has changed in the couple years in the almost 4 years that I've been at SkyDeck, I would say the top 3 ways that I think I've seen it evolve is, one, our international reputation and brand has really elevated, and a lot more startups around the world are aware of SkyDeck, right? So even though Berkeley SkyDeck is part of UC Berkeley, we're not just open to UC Berkeley affiliated startup founders. We're open to founders from all over the world. So if you're a founder based in Africa or Europe or somewhere in Asia, you too can apply, and are eligible to join SkyDeck. So we've seen significantly more applications coming from outside of the US. In fact, and this is just kind of speculative, but I think almost 80% of our deal flow comes from outside the US.
Wow.
And so that definitely, certain partnerships have really helped us gain more kind of brand awareness. And, as I see we've worked with lots of Taiwanese startups as well. So that's the first thing. The international reputation has really kind of elevated over the past several years. But the second thing I would say is that the advisor network has really expanded. So at the time that I joined SkyDeck, we had just 100 advisor and mentors in our network. And as of last week, I think we counted 499. So I'm just going to call it 500.
Yeah.
Oh.
So our advisors, 85% of them are UC Berkeley alumni. 40% of them are angel investors. Most of them are in tech. Almost all 99% of them are in tech, right? They have background as either founders or, there's some exec in some area of the tech industry. So all of them are really able to offer their area expertise and really help our startup founders accelerate their growth and momentum. So that's the other, I would say, the second way in which SkyDeck kind of really evolved. But third, I would say, and this is kind of tied to number one, which is the growth of our international reputation. I would say the caliber of startups has gotten really competitive. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this. One, in 2017, when Chan raised Fund One, which was about $24.5 million, and started deploying $100,000 in each startup that we selected, that really kind of enticed more companies to apply, right? Before 2017, SkyDeck was purely an incubator. But after 2017, the end of 2017, when Chan deployed his first investment, it really kind of changed the stakes. And as of this year, he closed Fund Two, which is $60 million. And that also meant that, now the investments are $200,000 for each startup that is selected and not just $100,000. So that starting capital is really helpful. That tied to the network and what the accelerator offers have all been kind of real benefits to companies that are really trying to accelerate and get off the ground fast.
Sibyl 刚才给我们介绍了这个 SkyDeck 的很多特色哈，那我还是很好奇它跟其他几个加速器有什么不同。So compare with other famous accelerators such like Y Combinator YC or Foundry Global and Techstars. What are the advantage and differentiators of SkyDeck?
Yeah, well, all of the accelerators that you've mentioned are great. YC obviously is the most well known. My brother went through YC, so and experience. So, I most of the founders I have spoken to speak highly of all three programs. So, when it comes to kind of talking a little bit more about the competitive differentiation of SkyDeck, though. A lot of our startup founders have actually been through some of these other accelerators that you mentioned. And so consistently, I would say the number one thing that they cite as being really differentiated from SkyDeck is that we're so hands-on with our startups. So we're kind of, with companies that are selected into our accelerator program, we do a lot of personalized and custom programming and make sure that we understand how they're doing, who they're meeting, which investors they're talking to. And if there's someone that they want to connect with and meet, we really go out of our way to help make those connections. And I think the reason we're able to do that on a totally different scale than some of the other accelerators you mentioned is because we're part of UC Berkeley, right? So I mentioned that we have a network of 500 advisors and mentors, most of whom have a UC Berkeley or UC affiliation. So that affinity to UC Berkeley kind of allows that enthusiasm from the advisor, makes it so easy for them to open their Rolodex and then basically make warm introductions to potential customers or industry professionals that can really help those startup founders. And then, of course, again, because of that affinity, their interest in kind of supporting and potentially even investing in the startup founders is there. I mentioned that 40% of our network are also angel investors. So by the time a company finishes the program at SkyDeck, they've gotten really good feedback from active angels on how they should be talking about their startup, what's interesting, what kind of traction they need to have. And then they get a lot of warm introductions, not just through the SkyDeck fund, but also through the network of advisors. And one other thing I'll just mention is, I think another key differentiator is the talent bridge that we offer. Every year, SkyDeck hosts 3 major intern fairs. We usually have 700 students participate in each intern fair. And annually, we successfully match 800 Berkeley students to intern for SkyDeck companies. And these aren't just undergrads, they're postdocs, MBAs, and undergrads. So that's a lot of intern help that these young startups can kind of leverage to kind of go faster.
Wow, it's a very strong
talent. 这个是非常非常厉害的。我觉得 SkyDeck 很特别的一个优势就是 UC Berkeley 是最大的公立大学，又是最好的公立大学，然后有 每年都会有这个实习生的招募活动，还有这个刚才前面提到你在做天使投资人的连结，这个策略伙伴的连接，其实因为 UC 的这个校友网络，那 UC 有13个分校，所以整个我来看，从 Berkeley 到整个 UC SkyDeck 体现了一个很强大的人脉网络，而且SkyDeck 还有一个很厉害的地方是，它是好几个学院的院长共同参与的，包括像工学院、商学院，然后现在工卫学院的连接也很强，所以其实它不仅是一个学校的官方加速器，它也把校友网络跟这个学生的实习的机会都带到了新创公司里面，这是我自己觉得非常厉害的地方。Yeah, so let's continue.
Yeah, very strong the talent networking system. Yeah. So I have a question about the SkyDecks. So any fields are you focused on?
Any particular industries? So we're
industry. Yeah.
We're industry agnostic. So that really means we'll take companies from any industry. However, we do have a reputation for being a deep tech accelerator. We've been known to take, two PhDs with very little business experience, but fantastic IP, and really kind of work with them and help them get to where they want to go. So we're willing to take risks on founders with, really interesting IP. But also we have certain tracks, specialized tracks that we have launched over the years. Our most built out track is far and away the life science bio track. So we just call it the bio track for short. And I want to say almost 15% of the companies that we invest in now are life science companies. And a good 80 advisors have biotech, medtech, biopharma kind of expertise. So we're definitely developing a reputation for that as well. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity, in the bio field, as well as AI. So there's lots of different areas that we're looking really closely at. Most recently, we launched a semiconductor chip track, and also an aero astro track. And finally, we launched a crypto blockchain track. So, we kind of have different reasons that we've launched those 3 particular tracks. Obviously, with the chip track, it's because there's a major shortage of kind of chip innovation. It's really hard to be a chip company and really accelerate, right? Because it's extremely capital intensive. So you need all of the kind of help you can get to kind of get your chip company off the ground. Taiwan obviously has really been a leader in this regard with TSMC. And then so the next track, the Aero Astro track, many people may not know that UC Berkeley acquired 37 acres of land in the Bay Area near Moffett Field. And so the idea is ultimately to kind of build out and develop that area into a major R&D center for aerospace and space tech innovation. So we hope to kind of become the home to many more Aero Astro companies in coming years. And finally, I mentioned that we recently this year launched the crypto blockchain track. I know we're going through crypto winter right now, so
it's a downturn.
But right before
it's not a bad time, actually.
Yeah.
You had the likes of a lot of Andreessen and Sequoia closing some really huge crypto funds, and so the timing's a little bit weird, but of course we still want to be kind of at the forefront of companies that are developing very innovative technologies across blockchain, crypto, Web3.
So you mentioned Taiwan. Maybe we have a lot of a strong and support about the semiconductor. So in the past few years, the Taiwanese government also cooperate with the SkyDeck for a long time, and through TTA and ATRA, and to train startup teams to advance the United States. So do you want to share the experience with the Taiwan's government or some technology companies?
Yeah, we've, over the past few years, we, as you just said, we've been working with a lot of Taiwanese startups that are funded through, the Taiwanese government, I think through the Ministry of Science and Technology. And so I can't remember the total number of Taiwanese companies that have come through. I want to say it's somewhere between 10 and 15. Some of them have come through our Global Innovation Partner Program. And then some of them have been selected directly into participating with our accelerator. And I would say I've always been, there are so few governments that are really kind of stepping up in terms of offering real support to their startup ecosystem. And I would say Taiwan is absolutely one of them. And I think there are just a handful of other countries that I can think of that are doing this at the same level as Taiwan. One is Korea, and then also Japan. Interestingly, they're all from Asia, but I would say that in kind of offering this level of backing and financial support, you really are able to see a far more robust startup ecosystem and much, kind of just a faster pace of innovation. So I'm really pleased to see that the Taiwanese government is really focused on this as a priority. And we've all at SkyDeck, we've been impressed with the caliber of startups coming out of Taiwan. Obviously, I think it goes without saying that a lot of the Taiwan has really focused on some of the life science biotech companies and also the chip companies. But in the past 2 years, there are 3 Taiwanese companies that actually got accepted into our accelerator. And our accelerator acceptance rate is just 1.5%. It's harder to get into SkyDeck than it is to get into UC Berkeley. And we had 3 Taiwanese companies. And I have to say that the characteristics of Taiwanese startup founders, I'm always blown away. So for example, we have, one of the founders that immediately comes to mind is Andrea Wang, who is the CEO of Ahead Medicine. And her and her company came through SkyDeck originally as part of our global innovation program. And then, they made a lot of progress and then were ultimately accepted the following cohort to the accelerator. And she kind of just embodies the tenacity, incredible work ethic, and curiosity that I see in so many Taiwanese startup founders. I was totally blown away. I always joke with Andrea that she set a record for the total number of advisors that she met when she came through SkyDeck the first time. She met 45 advisors for one-on-one meetings.
Oh, that's crazy.
Other founders had met that many in a short period. And I was just totally blown away. But this level of work ethic is a hallmark of what I see from a lot of Taiwanese founders. And I definitely think that gives them the advantage and the leg up they need to actually make it in the US, right? So yeah, I'm very impressed.
Yeah， 在我们接下来问题之前，那我补充一下 ，Andrea 是我们曾经有访问过，也是这个 SkyDeck 辅导过的台湾的新创的公司，是在生意领域非常杰出的一个创业者。那刚才这个 Sibyl 有提到说，他对于台湾创业者的观察是非常认真，也非常的积极，然后跟台湾政府这些年的合作，也让他充分感受到那像半导体啦、生医产业这几个领域，目前 SkyDeck 还有像新设了像 Crypto 区块链的这个track 就是不同的领域别，其实都是在台湾这几年刚好很凑巧，也是台湾这几年在新创领域的我们比较专注的领域，所以是一个很好的合作契機。So starting this year, SkyDeck has a European Base and Accelerator program in Milan, Italy. What will you consider establishing a base in Asia in the future, or even have the opportunity to land in Taipei?
Great question. Yes, we hope so one day.
Yes.
So yeah, as you said, I see in May of this year, SkyDeck launched a campus in Europe, and that we're calling that SkyDeck Europe based in Milan.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and
Milan. Wow, what's the city?
Yeah, the city of Milan in Italy the government has poured so much money into developing physical infrastructure and the ecosystem, right? So I think that was a really important reason that we chose that area as kind of the campus for SkyDeck Europe. But to answer your question, I think, for us, the way that we view kind of this international expansion is, when we launched SkyDeck Europe, it really enabled us to kind of take and select startups that really want to focus on, going to market in Europe and really making Europe their first kind of base of expansion, right? So not everyone wants to come to North America or the US to kind of launch their company. So in kind of opening a campus in Europe, that definitely kind of opens the opportunity and the funnel to working with startups that have a different initial focus, regional focus. And yes, absolutely. We're definitely very keen and interested in figuring out what this might look like in Asia. So we are having just different conversations and trying to figure out what that strategy looks like and where that first kind of campus in Asia might be, if we should pursue that. So, is there an opportunity to land in Taipei? There's always that chance, right? It really kind of depends on what happens over the next in the course of the next year or 2 or 3. So we'll see where that goes.
So, Sibyl, do you have any advice if some startups want to apply for the SkyDeck Accelerator program? So, what's the criteria or requirements for the teams?
Great question. So, yeah, I know it seems sometimes like a black box in terms of applying to an accelerator, especially when you're based outside of the US. You don't really know what the evaluation criteria is. For us at SkyDeck, we kind of have 4 different pillars that we're evaluating startups on. One is the market opportunity. How big is this market? The second is kind of just the IP, the strength of the IP. There are so many startups working on very similar ideas, right? So ultimately, you have to be standing on some pretty strong IP to kind of be selected. And then I would say traction is also extremely important. We want to know in the short time that a startup has been working on building their product, how much progress have they made? Have they sold to early customers? Or even if they haven't started generating revenue, do they have users that have indicated strong interests in a product like theirs? And fourth, last but certainly not least, I would say, probably the single most important thing we're really looking at, as with the case with so many kind of accelerators, you're really making an early jockey bet, right? So the team, the strength of the founding team is extremely important. How tenacious are these founders? How hardworking are they? What kind of resilience and grit have they exhibited? And it's hard to always kind of be able to parse through that through an application. But usually by the time we interview the founders, you can really get a sense for who they are and how they think in the way that they're articulating themselves and expressing themselves. So I would say, for any kind of Taiwanese founders interested in applying to SkyDeck, or even just making that leap across the ocean and coming to the US, those same 4 pillars or criteria are really what VCs are using to kind of evaluate whether they want to work with a startup. So, before kind of taking an investor meeting or interviewing with an accelerator, it's good to make sure that, you're putting your best foot forward on all 4 fronts.
Okay, so how many teams? So every year you have how many teams?
Yeah, every year SkyDeck works with 300 startups across our different programs.
Wow.
Yeah, 300 startups. So we have a lot of companies that we're working with. And then we're only investing in 40 of them. So the 40 companies we invest in, they now get $200,000 each. They go through our accelerator program. The other companies are part of our incubator, where they get a lot of access to similar resources, but they don't receive that investment. We have the innovation partner program, where startups can, are usually sponsored by a government entity or organization, and they have their program fees paid for. And then finally, we have the Berkeley SkyDeck Europe or SkyDeck Europe Milan program for startups that are interested in kind of expanding in Europe. Those companies will take about 20 of them a year now, and they get 145,000 euros. So basically, those are the 4 programs that we host, and that's how we see 300 startups a year.
So how many times for the demo days per year because I saw the SkyDeck's demo day is very, very good because a lot of the startups founder they come here to demo their thoughts and their visions in the demo day.
Yeah, so we have a demo day at the end of each program.
Yeah.
So that's basically every 6 months we have a demo day, and now that we've launched SkyDeck Europe Milan, they will have their own demo day as well. So we always have a demo day in May and November. So it's basically 2 demo days a year.
So November is coming.
Yeah, I'm sorry, September. Sorry,
September.
May,
Okay,
September.
May and September.
And now with SkyDeck Europe, we'll also be adding their demo days, which will be October and also around May as well. So
okay. Wow. So today we really learned a lot of things from Sibyl, from your experience, your story about the early 20s age. Yeah. And so thank you. Appreciate your help and to share your insights and experience for us. Yeah. So if possible, so next time we want to take a visit in SkyDeck.
Yeah, we definitely 欢迎你们两个来 SkyDeck. And of course, we see IC all the time, but you visited SkyDeck. So anytime you want to come, let me know, and we'll happily host you.
谢谢 Sibyl。然后我们今天呢，其实因为 Sibyl 他其实今天已经是在待产期，他还要即将迎接他的第二个 baby， 所以我们今天其实真的很开心，然后有这个机会能够跟 Sibyl 在空中相会。
真的呀，等你宝宝出生，我们再去庆祝一下。
先验一下 PCR。OK， 所以谢谢 Sibyl， 好，那我们就下次再见喽，谢谢。
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
感谢大家的收听，如果还有任何问题想要讨论，都欢迎到矽谷为什么的 Facebook 粉丝页还有社团留言哦，也请大家多多按赞，分享给身边的亲朋好友。
我们在 Apple Podcast、Spotify、Google Podcast 和 KKBOX 也都上线了，你也可以在这些平台找到矽谷为什么。再次感谢国发会 Startup Island Taiwan 和数位时代 Meet 创业小记的独家赞助。我们下次再见喽，拜拜，
拜拜。